My name is Audrey, and I'm 28 years old. This wheelchair, it's a permanent reminder of the day my family chose a birthday party over my life. That afternoon was supposed to be a typical family gathering, another celebration for my golden child brother Jason. I showed up, gift in hand, ready to play my part. But as I lay on the concrete, unable to feel my legs, my father looked down at me and said the words that would change everything. "Walk it off. You're ruining your brother's party." The shock wasn't the fall. It was the realization that my own family would watch me suffer. And what they didn't know was that their cruel dismissal was about to turn a tragic accident into a crime scene. If you've ever had your pain completely invalidated by the people who should care the most, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button, because you're going to want to see how the MRI results turned my family into criminals. In my family's eyes, I was just Audrey. The quiet one, the responsible one, the one who taught elementary school and probably struggled to make rent. My father used to call my career a cute little hobby, something to keep me busy. My mother would occasionally sigh over the phone, telling me she worried about my finances, offering to send me a $20 bill tucked inside a greeting card. They saw me as stagnant, predictable, safe. They had absolutely no idea who I was becoming when they weren't looking. While my brother Jason was burning through our parents' money, bouncing from one failed venture to the next, I was quietly building an empire. It started small. I wasn't just a teacher. I was obsessed with being the best. I spent my nights and weekends devouring educational theory, earning certifications, and eventually a master's degree that I paid for myself, one grueling semester at a time. I saw flaws in the outdated curriculum our school district was using, so I started designing my own lesson plans from scratch, integrating technology and new teaching methods. Other teachers noticed. My principal noticed. Soon I was asked to lead workshops, first for my school, then for others in the district. I remember the day everything shifted. I was standing in front of the entire school board, a panel of stern-looking men and women who held the future of thousands of students in their hands. My boss was supposed to give the presentation, but he came down with the flu at the last minute. He called me in a panic. "Audrey, you have to do it. You know this material better than anyone." My heart was pounding. Public speaking wasn't my strong suit, especially not in front of people who held so much power. But as I stood at that podium, looking at the data I had compiled, the results I had achieved in my own classroom, a strange calm washed over me. I wasn't just talking about theories, I was talking about my reality. For 30 minutes, I lay out a comprehensive plan to overhaul the district's entire language arts program. I showed them the numbers, the engagement metrics, and the test score improvements. When I finished, there was silence. A long, terrifying silence. Then, the superintendent, a woman known for her tough-as-nails reputation, took off her glasses. She looked right at me and said, "Ms. Matthews, that was the most impressive proposal I've seen in my 10 years on this board." That day, I walked out of that room not just as a teacher, but as the newly appointed curriculum development specialist for the entire district. My salary nearly doubled overnight. But I never told my family. Why would I? To them, any success I had was an afterthought, a footnote in the grand drama of Jason's life. If I told them, my mother would find a way to spin it into a story about how lucky I was, and my father would probably make a dismissive comment about public sector jobs. My success was mine alone. It was my secret, my power, and I guarded it fiercely. I didn't change my lifestyle overnight. I kept driving my reliable old Honda. I still packed my own lunch. But every single paycheck, a significant portion, went straight into a high-yield savings account and a carefully managed investment portfolio. While Jason was begging my dad for money to cover his latest credit card bill, my stock portfolio was quietly growing. While my mother was co-signing a lease for Jason's ridiculously expensive apartment, I was meeting with a mortgage broker. 6 months before the birthday party, I did something I'd only ever dreamed of. I bought my own place. It was a condo on the 15th floor of a new building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. It wasn't huge, but it was a fortress of solitude, a space that was entirely, unequivocally mine. No one in my family had the address. They thought I was still living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, the one my mom always called a little bleak. They'd call and ask if I needed them to co-sign a new lease for me, offering their help with a tone of condescending pity. I'd just smile and say, "No, I'm okay for now. Thanks for offering." The lie felt like armor. Every nail I hammered into the wall, every piece of furniture I assembled myself. It was a declaration of independence. I was building a life they couldn't touch, couldn't criticize, couldn't diminish. They saw me as the dependent daughter, the one who would always need them. They saw me as weak. And that miscalculation, their complete and utter blindness to who I had become, would ultimately be their undoing. My secret wasn't just a condo or a bank account. It was a weapon. And I had no idea how soon I'd be forced to use it. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. It was my mother. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone she only used when she wanted something. "Audrey, darling, you know your brother's 31st birthday is this Saturday, right? We're having a big barbecue. Everyone will be there." I could already feel the familiar knot tightening in my stomach. A party for Jason meant a performance for me. A day of smiling through passive-aggressive comments, of watching my parents shower him with praise and expensive gifts while I faded into the wallpaper. "I don't know, Mom," I started. "I have a lot of work to catch up on." But she cut me off, her voice turning just a little too cheerful. "Oh, you must come. It wouldn't be a family celebration without you. Your father just had the most gorgeous new pool deck installed, Brazilian hardwood. It cost him a fortune. You have to see it." Then came the strange part. "And honey," she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "how are you doing? You know, financially? Are you managing okay in that little apartment of yours? Your father and I were just saying, we worry about you." The question hung in the air, heavy and insincere. They had never once asked about my finances with genuine concern. It was always a lead-in to a lecture or an unfavorable comparison to Jason. A cold feeling washed over me. Something was off. It was like the stillness in the air right before a thunderstorm, an unnatural calm that promised chaos. The feeling lingered all week. My father, who rarely texts, sent me a message asking what my work schedule was like. Jason, who hadn't called me in 6 months, left a rambling voicemail about how he couldn't wait to see his little sis. It was all too much, too friendly, too coordinated. I felt like a pawn in a game I didn't understand, being moved into position for a checkmate I couldn't see coming. Still, that tiny, foolish part of me, the part that still craved their approval, convinced me to go. "Maybe this time would be different," it whispered. "Maybe they finally see me." That hope was the most dangerous thing of all. I arrived at the party, and it was exactly as I'd pictured. My father playing the proud host at the grill, my mother fluttering around ensuring everyone's glasses were full, and Jason, holding court by the pool, soaking in the attention like a king. The first hour was a blur of forced small talk and polite smiles. I gave Jason his gift, a generic card with $200 inside, and tried to stay on the periphery. But eventually, inevitably, Jason turned his attention to me. In front of all his friends, he started bringing up old stories, each one designed to humiliate me. He laughed about the time he and his friends convinced me the neighbor's friendly golden retriever had rabies, a lie that gave me nightmares for months. His best friend, Tyler, chimed in, howling with laughter as he recalled the time they switched my shampoo with hair removal cream right before my 8th grade school pictures. My parents stood nearby, smiling faintly, as if this public degradation was just harmless family fun. That was it. I had reached my limit. I wasn't going to be their punching bag for one more second. "I have to go," I said firmly, gathering my purse. Jason intercepted me, his eyes gleaming with a familiar, cruel amusement. He was drunk, which always made him more volatile. "Leaving so soon, sis? The party's just getting started." He blocked my path. I tried to step around him, but he wouldn't move. "No thanks, Jason. I'm leaving." The mask of friendliness dropped from his face, replaced by a cold sneer. Still the same uptight Audrey. Some things never change. I walked away, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and relief. All I had to do was cross that new $20,000 pool deck, get to my car, and I would be free. But as I stepped onto the gleaming Brazilian hardwood, I knew something was terribly wrong. The surface felt slick, dangerously slick. I glanced down and saw a faint, almost invisible sheen on the wood. In that split second, I saw Jason's triumphant smirk reflected in the glass of the patio door. I knew what was about to happen, but it was too late. My foot shot out from under me with violent force. Time seemed to warp, slowing down as my body became weightless. I saw the faces of the party guests, a gallery of shock and cruel anticipation. I saw my father turn from the grill, a burger flipper still in his hand. I saw my mother pause mid-conversation, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. And then, there was the impact. Not with the wood, but with the unforgiving concrete edge of the pool. A sickening, cracking sound echoed in my ears as my lower back and head struck simultaneously. The world exploded into a starburst of white-hot pain, then tilted and spun into a nauseating blur. When my vision finally cleared, I was staring up at a perfectly blue, indifferent sky. The pain was indescribable. A deep, grinding agony in my spine and a throbbing fire in my skull. But worse than the pain was the absence of it. The terrifying, silent void where the lower half of my body should have been. "Help," I rasped, the word barely a whisper. "Please, I can't feel my legs." Jason loomed over me, a drunken grin plastered on his face. "Nice pratfall, sis. Very dramatic." He turned to his friends. She was always a theater kid. I tried to move, to push myself up, but my body wouldn't respond. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw its way up my throat. "I'm serious, Jason," I cried, my voice cracking. "Something is wrong. Call an ambulance." My father pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of irritation. "What is going on here, Audrey? Get off the ground." "Dad," I sobbed, a wave of desperate relief washing over me. He would help me. He had to. "I fell. I hit my back. I can't feel my legs. I need a doctor." The response I received was a dismissive scoff that shattered what was left of my world. "For God's sake, Audrey," he snapped. "Walk it off. Stop being a baby. You're making a scene at your brother's party." My mother was right behind him, her voice a furious whisper. "You are ruining his birthday with this performance." My father's patience finally snapped. He was clearly done with my melodrama in front of his friends and business associates. "All right," he roared, his voice silencing the murmurs of the crowd. "If you won't get up yourself, I'll get you up." Before I could even process his words, he lunged down, aiming to hook his hands under my arms and haul me to my feet like a disobedient child. A bolt of pure, icy terror shot through me, overpowering even the physical pain. "No!" The scream tore from my lungs, raw and desperate. "Dad, don't! Don't touch me! You'll make it worse!" But he wasn't listening. He only saw defiance. He only saw a daughter challenging his authority. As his fingers gripped my arms and he began to pull, an electric shock of agony, 1,000 times worse than the initial impact, surged up my spine. My vision went black at the edges. I screamed again, a high, thin sound of pure anguish. "Stop!" The female voice was sharp, authoritative, and it cut through the chaos like a surgeon's scalpel. "Get your hands off her! Right now!" My father froze, stunned into inaction. The crowd parted, and a woman I didn't recognize strode towards us. She fixed my father with a gaze that could have melted steel. "I'm a nurse," she stated, her voice leaving no room for argument. "And you are about to permanently paralyze your daughter. Back. Away." It was the first time in my life I had ever seen anyone stand up to my father. It was the first time a stranger had protected me from my own family. And in that moment, as she knelt beside me, her kind eyes meeting mine, I realized that my old life, the one where I desperately sought their love, was over. The fall had broken my back, but their reaction, that had just broken me. At this point, I don't even know what word to use to describe what I'm feeling. If you're feeling the same outrage that I am right now, help me out and comment one word to describe this family's actions, because I'm at a total loss. But instead of shattering completely, that outrage began to morph into something else. Something cold, and hard, and focused. A new strength was being forged in the fire of their betrayal. The world outside the ambulance window was a meaningless blur of color and light. Inside, it was a universe of calculated calm. The paramedic named Sarah moved with quiet efficiency, her voice a steady anchor in the swirling chaos of my mind. She spoke to me in low tones, explaining every procedure, every needle prick, every strap they used to secure me to the backboard. The pain was still there, a relentless burning fire in my spine, but something else was beginning to take its place. A strange, cold clarity. The tears had stopped. The desperate pleas for help had died in my throat. Lying there, completely immobilized, I felt a profound shift happen inside me. It wasn't a conscious decision, it was a chemical reaction. The years of emotional abuse, of being dismissed, of being told my pain wasn't real, had finally reached a critical mass. The fall was just the catalyst. The real injury had happened moments later when my own father tried to haul my broken body off the ground to save face. In that moment, the hopeful little girl inside me, the one who kept showing up to family events hoping for a crumb of affection, finally died. She didn't fade away. She was executed, and in her place, something new and hard and cold was born. My mind started working with a terrifying efficiency. All emotion was stripped away, leaving only a raw, processing logic. I replayed every dismissive comment, every blatant act of favoritism, every time my pain was treated as an inconvenience. It wasn't a series of unfortunate events. It was a pattern, a system, a family structure built on the foundation of my silence and my brother's entitlement. They would never change. The realization was not sad. It was just a fact, like knowing the sky is blue or that fire is hot. My family was incapable of seeing my worth, and therefore, they were a threat to my survival. The thought was chillingly simple, and with that simplicity came a surge of focused energy. The pain in my back was a constant, screaming reminder of their betrayal. It wasn't a source of weakness anymore. It was fuel. It was a promise that this was the last time, the absolute, final time. As the ambulance pulled away, I caught a glimpse of the flashing lights of a police cruiser pulling into our driveway. The paramedics had done their job. They had seen the truth. The nurse, Rachel, had seen it. And now, the law would see it too. The arrival of the police confirmed what I already knew in my gut. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. This was a crime scene. When we arrived at the hospital, the emergency room was a whirlwind of activity. Doctors and nurses swarmed around me, shouting medical terms I didn't understand. But my mind was a quiet island in the middle of the storm. They wheeled me into a cold, sterile room for an MRI. As I lay in that humming, claustrophobic tube, I didn't think about whether I would walk again. I didn't think about the pain. I thought about my laptop, my bank accounts, my condo, my secret life, my weapons. I thought about the files on my computer, the meticulously organized spreadsheets where I tracked my investments, the digital copies of every important document. I thought about the name of a lawyer a colleague had recommended a few months back for a completely unrelated issue, a man known for being an absolute shark in civil litigation. The name, Michael Greenberg, floated to the surface of my mind, clear as day. A few hours later, a neurosurgeon with tired, kind eyes came to my room. He pulled up the MRI images on a glowing screen. He didn't need to say much. I could see it. The shattered vertebrae. The dark, ominous shadow pressed against my spinal cord. An incomplete spinal cord injury, he said softly. The surgery stabilized the fracture, but there's significant compression. The next few weeks will tell us a lot about the extent of the permanent damage. Permanent damage. The words just hung there. I felt my mother, who had somehow been allowed in, start to sob dramatically beside me. My father stood stiffly by the door, his face pale. I just looked at the doctor and asked a single quiet question. Can I have my phone? The first call I made wasn't to a friend. It wasn't to cry on someone's shoulder. It was to my best friend, Jessica, but my request was purely logistical. Jess, I said, my voice flat and even, I need you to do something for me. I need you to go to my apartment. The spare key is under the loose brick by the front planter. I gave her the address, ignoring her frantic, worried questions. In my office, on my desk, is my laptop. I need you to bring it to me here at Mass General. And the charger. Don't forget the charger. And Jess, don't tell my parents you're doing this. The second call was to my financial advisor. David, I said, it's Audrey Matthews. I need you to move all my liquid assets from the growth portfolio into the most stable, conservative fund you have, effective immediately. And I need you to email me a complete, updated statement of all my accounts. He was confused, but I was one of his most meticulous clients. He knew not to argue. He just said, I'll have it done within the hour. While my mother was in the hallway, loudly performing her role as the grieving parent for anyone who would listen, and my father was awkwardly trying to talk to a hospital administrator, I was quietly laying the groundwork for war. I logged into my bank accounts on my phone. I changed all the passwords. I set up new security alerts. I transferred the majority of my checking account balance into my high-yield savings account, leaving just enough to cover my automatic bill payments. Every action was deliberate, precise, emotionless. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. This was about survival. I knew with absolute certainty that a storm was coming. My family, faced with the consequences of their actions, would become desperate. And desperate people, especially my family, were dangerous. They would try to control the narrative. They would try to control me, using guilt, manipulation, and, if necessary, financial pressure. I was building a firewall around my life, brick by digital brick. They had no idea that the poor, struggling daughter they thought they knew had the resources and the resolve to burn their world to the ground. They had started the fire when they left me broken on that concrete, but I was the one who was about to control the inferno. 6 months passed in a blur of sterile white walls, monotonous beeping, and the grueling Sisyphean task of rehabilitation. 6 months of learning to navigate a world that was no longer built for my body. Jason had taken a plea deal, felony reckless endangerment, and was serving a 2-year sentence in a medium-security prison. My parents, thanks to a high-priced lawyer, had gotten off with probation for criminal negligence and failure to render aid. But the criminal case was just the opening act. The main event was the civil suit. My lawsuit. The one that would determine the rest of my life. The day of the mediation hearing was gray and overcast, a perfect mirror of my mood. I rolled into the conference room of a downtown law firm, my lawyer, Michael Greenberg, beside me. He was a shark in a $1,000 suit, and for the first time in my life, I was glad to have a predator on my side. Then, they walked in. My father, Douglas, looked older and more tired, but still radiating that same aura of arrogant authority. My mother, Eleanor, was clutching her purse like a life raft, her face a carefully constructed mask of sorrowful concern. And their lawyer, a slick, overconfident man who looked like he'd stepped right out of a TV drama. They sat on the opposite side of the long, polished mahogany table. The air was thick with unspoken accusations and years of resentment. They didn't look at me, not directly. They looked at my wheelchair. They looked at the space where the daughter they used to know once stood. My mother started to sniffle softly into a tissue, the opening salvo in her well-rehearsed performance of the heartbroken mother. My father simply stared at the head of the table, his jaw set, as if he were chairing a hostile board meeting. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a business negotiation, and I was just an unfortunate liability on their balance sheet. Their lawyer began. He spoke in a smooth, condescending tone, weaving a narrative of a tragic, unforeseen accident and a family torn apart by grief. He talked about Jason's deep and profound remorse. He talked about my parents' unwavering love and support. It was a masterpiece of fiction, and I just sat there, my hands resting calmly on the wheels of my chair, and let him talk. Then came the offer. In the spirit of healing and family reconciliation, he said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. The Matthews family is prepared to make a very generous offer. They will cover all of Audrey's documented medical expenses for the next 5 years. Additionally, as a gesture of goodwill, they are offering a one-time pain and suffering settlement of $100,000. He sat back, a smug little smile playing on his lips, as if he had just solved world peace. $100,000. The number was an insult. It was a price tag for my legs, a valuation for my future, a discount on my life. My father leaned forward, finally addressing me directly for the first time in half a year. His voice was firm, authoritative, the voice he used when he expected to be obeyed. "Audrey," he said, "this is more than fair. It's time to put this behind us. It's time to stop punishing your brother, to stop punishing us. It's time for this family to heal." My mother nodded eagerly, dabbing at her dry eyes. "He's right, darling. We can't move on if you keep holding on to this anger. We love you. We just want our family back together." They actually believed it. They sat there, in their expensive clothes, in that high-rise office, genuinely believing that they held all the cards. They believed that they could name their price, offer me a few scraps from their table, and that I, the broken, dependent daughter, would have no choice but to accept. They still saw me as the little girl they could dismiss and control. They had no idea they were sitting across from a stranger. I took a deep breath. I didn't look at my parents. I looked at their lawyer. And then, I turned to my lawyer, Michael, and gave him a single, almost imperceptible nod. That was the signal. Michael leaned back in his chair and let out a short, humorless laugh. It was a sound that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. $100,000? He said, shaking his head in disbelief. 5 years of medical? Sir, you either think my client is a fool, or you haven't done your homework. My parents' lawyer bristled. "This is a more than generous offer." Michael cut him off, his voice turning sharp and cold. "No. A generous offer is what you give to a distant cousin who slips on your front steps. This," he said, his voice dropping, "is a catastrophic, life-altering injury caused by a deliberate act of malice, followed by a criminally negligent response. We are not in the same ballpark. We are not even playing the same sport." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. It was a thick, bound report, nearly 2 inches thick. He dropped it on the table with a heavy, definitive thud that made my mother jump. "My client will be declining your offer," Michael stated, his eyes locking with my father's. "And this is our counteroffer." He pushed the document across the table. My father's lawyer picked it up, his confident smirk beginning to falter as he flipped through the first few pages. "This," Michael explained, his voice like ice, "is a comprehensive life care plan compiled by a team of medical and economic experts. It details the projected, non-negotiable costs for Audrey's care for the rest of her natural life." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "It includes everything: ongoing physical therapy, specialized medical equipment, necessary home and vehicle modifications, round-the-clock caregiver assistance for when she's older, loss of earning potential, everything." He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the table. "The number you're looking for is on the final page. It's not $100,000, it's $8.5 million. $8.5 million. The silence in the room was absolute. My father's face went from pale to a ghastly shade of gray. My mother made a small, choking sound. Their lawyer just stared at the document, his mouth slightly agape, as if it were written in a foreign language. The number was impossible. It was absurd. But it was real, and it was backed by hundreds of pages of undeniable, expert-verified data. Michael wasn't finished. "And let me be clear about something else," he continued, his voice relentless. "That 8.5 million is not a negotiation starting point. It is our demand. Your clients had a chance to do the right thing. They had a chance to show remorse. They chose not to. Therefore, we are no longer interested in just what their homeowner's insurance policy will cover. That $1 million policy limit? That's just the down payment." He pointed a finger first at my father, then my mother. "We will be coming after your personal assets, the house, the stock portfolio, the retirement accounts, everything. We will place liens on every asset you own until this debt is paid in full. We will garnish your wages. We will take it all." My father finally found his voice. It was a strangled whisper. "You can't do that. You can't." "Oh, we can," Michael said with a grim smile. "And we will. You see, you left us no choice." The carefully constructed world of Douglas and Eleanor Matthews had just been hit by a wrecking ball. The illusion of control, the power they had wielded over me my entire life, had evaporated in the space of 30 seconds. They were no longer the ones in charge. They were just two people staring into the abyss of financial ruin. And in that moment of deafening silence, I finally turned and looked directly at my father. His eyes were wide with shock, disbelief, and for the first time, fear. He was looking at me, really looking at me, and seeing a person he didn't recognize. The quiet, compliant girl was gone. I leaned forward slightly in my chair, making sure he could hear every single word. "You always told me to toughen up," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Well, I did. Now you get to see what that looks like." The immediate aftermath of Michael's bombshell was pure, unadulterated chaos. The carefully composed masks my parents wore shattered into a million pieces. My father, the stoic patriarch, was the first to break. He shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "You can't be serious," he stammered, his voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. He wasn't talking to Michael. He was talking to me. "Audrey, what is this? This is insane. $8.5 million? This isn't justice. This is a shakedown. We're your family." My mother dissolved into hysterical sobs, her performance suddenly becoming terrifyingly real. "My baby," she wailed, rocking back and forth. "My little girl, how could you do this to us, after everything we've done for you?" Their lawyer, realizing he had lost complete control of his clients, tried to intervene. He put a hand on my father's arm, but my father shook it off. The man was a cornered animal, lashing out in a blind panic. Their lawyer quickly confirmed their worst fears. He explained, in grim, legalistic terms, that our demand was not only possible, but probable, given the evidence. The admission of guilt from Jason, the witness testimony from the nurse, the police report citing their delay in rendering aid. It was an open and shut case. We held all the cards. The moment that reality sank in, the shock morphed into sheer primal panic. They understood. They finally understood that this wasn't a negotiation they could win. This was a surrender. The mediation ended abruptly. As Michael and I left the conference room, I could hear my father's raised voice echoing down the hall. Not angry anymore, but pleading. He was pleading with his own lawyer, asking if there was anything at all that could be done. The answer, apparently, was no. The first phone call came before I even made it back to my apartment. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was a frantic, tearful rant. It started with accusations. How could I be so cruel, so ungrateful? Then it shifted to desperate bargaining. We could work this out, just the four of us. We didn't need lawyers. It ended with a thinly veiled threat. If I went through with this, I would be destroying the family forever. The calls kept coming. Every few minutes, my phone would buzz with her number. Then my father's. I didn't answer. I just watched the screen light up, each call a small explosion of their collapsing world. By the time I got home, I had 17 missed calls and 9 voicemails. Then came the texts, a relentless barrage of digital desperation. My mother's were long, rambling paragraphs filled with guilt trips and appeals to a shared history that felt like a lifetime ago. I remember when you were a little girl, one of them read, how you used to fall asleep in my arms. What happened to that sweet girl, Audrey? Where did she go? My father was blunt and furious. You are making the biggest mistake of your life. You will regret this. Pick up the phone, now. They were trying to pull all the old levers of control, the ones that had worked on me for 28 years. Guilt, fear, obligation. But the machine was broken. The levers weren't connected to anything anymore. I read each message with a detached clinical interest, like a scientist observing the predictable behavior of lab rats. The escalation I had anticipated came that evening. Around 8 p.m., the intercom in my condo buzzed. It was the front desk security. Ms. Matthews, there's a couple down here to see you. A Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. They say they're your parents. They seem quite agitated. They had found me. They must have hounded some distant relative for my address, the one I had guarded so carefully. Do not let them up, I said, my voice calm. And please inform them that if they do not leave the premises, I will call the police. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, putting it on speaker. It was Jason. He was calling from a contraband cell phone inside prison. His voice was shaky, nothing like the arrogant bully I had known my whole life. Audrey, please, you gotta listen to me, he begged. I screwed up. I know I did. I was an idiot. I'm so sorry, okay? I'm sorry for everything. But you can't do this to Mom and Dad. You can't take everything from them. It'll kill them. It was the closest I'd ever heard him come to a genuine apology. But then came the hook. If you drop this lawsuit, he whispered, I swear, I'll pay you back. I'll get a job. I'll pay for whatever you need. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Just, please don't do this. The offer was pathetic, laughable. He had never held a job for more than a few months. He had no concept of money, of responsibility. It was just another desperate gambit, another attempt to manipulate me into saving them from the consequences of their own actions. As I was on the phone with Jason, I heard it, a frantic pounding on my apartment door. They hadn't left. They had somehow managed to get past security and were now standing right outside my fortress. Audrey! It was my father's voice, muffled but unmistakable, roaring with rage. Audrey, open this door right now! You will talk to us! The pounding grew louder, more violent. It sounded like he was trying to break the door down. I hung up on Jason. I sat there in the silence of my living room, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and just listened. I listened to the sounds of the two people who were supposed to protect me, trying to smash their way into my home. I listened to my mother's muffled sobs and my father's furious shouts. They weren't my parents anymore. They were intruders. They were the monsters at the gate. The little girl inside me would have been terrified. She would have opened the door. She would have apologized for causing them pain. But that little girl was gone. I picked up my phone again. This time, I didn't call a lawyer or a financial advisor. I dialed 3 simple numbers. 911. 911, what's your emergency? The calm voice on the other end asked. Hello? I said, my own voice perfectly steady. I'd like to report a disturbance. 2 people are attempting to forcibly enter my apartment. And as I gave the operator my name and address, a strange sense of peace settled over me. The storm had finally broken, and I was safe inside, watching the wreckage from a distance, completely untouched. The police arrived in under 10 minutes. Through my peephole, I watched two officers calmly escort my sputtering, indignant father and my weeping mother out of the building. The pounding stopped. The shouting stopped. And in the ensuing silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. It wasn't a happy peace. It was a cold, quiet, empty place. The kind of peace that comes after a devastating war, when the bombs have finally stopped falling, and all that's left is to survey the wreckage. The next morning, I had Michael, my lawyer, file for a restraining order. It was a clean, legal severing, a final, undeniable boundary. Then I sat down and methodically blocked every one of their numbers from my phone. I blocked them on every social media platform. I created a new email address and set up a filter to send anything from their old addresses straight to the trash. I was erasing them from my life, one click at a time. Of course, they found a way around it. A few days later, a call came through from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. It was my mother, her voice thin and reedy, trying one last time to pull the strings of guilt. "Audrey," she began, her voice already thick with tears. "I don't understand. A restraining order? Against your own mother? After everything I've sacrificed for you, for this family?" I let her talk. I let her spin her narrative of martyrdom and sacrifice, the same story she'd been telling herself for 30 years. I listened to it all without saying a word. When she finally paused to take a breath, waiting for my apology, waiting for me to break down and say she was right, I spoke. My voice was not angry. It was not sad. It was just empty. "The choices you made have consequences," I said, the words feeling strange and powerful on my tongue. "My health, my future, my safety, those are my responsibilities now, not yours. I am no longer responsible for your feelings, your finances, or your problems. Goodbye, Eleanor." And before she could respond, I hung up. I didn't slam the phone down. I just pressed the red button on the screen, severing the last thread that connected me to my old life. For the first time, I hadn't backed down. I had chosen myself over their comfort. That moment was a turning point. If you support this powerful decision she made, drop A or A in the comments to send her some strength for the journey ahead. Because the strength I felt in that moment was exactly what I needed to start rebuilding. And I quickly learned that I wasn't rebuilding alone. The family I had been born into had failed me in every conceivable way. But a new family, one forged in crisis and built on a foundation of genuine care, was beginning to form around me. My best friend, Jessica, was the first pillar of that new foundation. She was the one who got my laptop from my old apartment. She was the one who sat with me in the hospital for hours on end, not talking, just being there. A quiet, reassuring presence when I couldn't bear to be alone. When I was finally discharged to a rehabilitation facility, she was the one who took charge of my life. She researched accessible apartments, battling with landlords and contractors to get one modified for my needs. She packed up my entire life from my downtown condo, labeling every box with meticulous care. She didn't do it because of obligation. She did it because she was my friend. She saw my pain and, instead of turning away, she stepped directly into it, holding my hand the entire way. My boss, the superintendent of the school district, became another unexpected ally. When I told her what had happened, I expected pity. I expected to be quietly shuffled into a less demanding, dead-end position. Instead, she looked at me with respect. "Audrey," she said, "you are one of the most brilliant curriculum designers I have ever worked with. Your brain is your greatest asset, and that hasn't changed. We will do whatever it takes to keep you on this team." And she did. They set me up with a state-of-the-art home office. They changed my title to Director of Curriculum Innovation, a role I could perform almost entirely remotely. They didn't see a victim. They saw a valuable professional. They saw my worth beyond my physical limitations. For the first time, my professional life wasn't just a secret weapon, it was a lifeline. It was a community that valued me for my mind, for my contributions, something my own family had never been capable of doing. And then there were the strangers, the people who owed me nothing but gave me everything. Rachel, the off-duty nurse from the party, was the first person who saw my injury for what it was. She visited me in the hospital, bringing magazines and gossip to break the monotony. She became a fierce, protective friend. Sarah, the lead paramedic who had stood up to my father, also stopped by. She told me that in her 15 years on the job, she had never seen a family respond with such callousness. "You deserved better," she said, her words validating my entire life's experience. "Don't you ever let anyone make you doubt that." These people, Jessica, my boss, Rachel, Sarah, my lawyer, Michael, they became my family, my chosen family. They weren't bound to me by blood, but by something far stronger: mutual respect, compassion, and a shared belief in my worth. They taught me what family was supposed to feel like. It wasn't about keeping up appearances. It wasn't about power dynamics or endless sacrifice. It was about showing up. It was about believing someone when they say they're in pain. It was about building a circle of support so strong that no storm could ever break it. And with them by my side, I wasn't just surviving. I was starting to build a new life, one where I was finally in charge. 2 years have passed since the day my life split into a before and an after. My world looks very different now. I live in a beautiful, light-filled apartment that Jessica helped me design, a space built for my independence, not my limitations. I still work for the school district, now as the Director of Curriculum Innovation, a role that challenges and fulfills me every single day. And I'm not alone. During my months in rehabilitation, I met a physical therapist named Thomas. He saw me at my weakest, and somehow, he saw the strongest parts of me too. Our relationship is built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect, something I never knew was possible. Life is not perfect, it's hard, but it's mine. It is a life that I have built for myself piece by piece, out of the ashes of the one that was taken from me. As for my old family, their world looks very different too. The lawsuit was settled out of court. Faced with financial ruin and public disgrace, they had no choice but to agree to our terms. They sold the big house in the suburbs, the one that was the symbol of their perfect life. They liquidated most of my father's precious retirement fund. The money now sits in a trust, managed by a third party, ensuring that my care is secure for the rest of my life. I heard through the grapevine that my parents moved to a small condo in Florida, trying to escape the whispers and the shame that followed them in their old community. Jason was released from prison 6 months ago. The golden child, stripped of his safety net, was forced to get a real job for the first time in his 33 years. He works stocking shelves at a grocery store now. The universe, it seems, has a strange and brutal sense of irony. About a month ago, I received a letter. It was from Jason. It was a long, handwritten apology, filled with words like accountability and remorse, words I never thought he knew. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for anything. He simply said he was sorry for the lifetime of cruelty, not just for the one act that broke my back. I read the letter, and then I put it away in a drawer. Forgiveness is a complicated journey, and I'm not sure if it's one I'm ready to take. Maybe someday, maybe not. But my healing is no longer dependent on his apology or on their regret. It's dependent only on me. That day at the party, my family taught me the most painful and the most valuable lesson of my life. They taught me that your value doesn't come from the approval of others, especially when those others are incapable of seeing you. They taught me that true strength isn't about enduring endless pain with a smile. It's about having the courage to say, enough. And they taught me that financial independence isn't just about money. It's about freedom. The freedom to walk away. the freedom to build your own fortress. And most importantly, they taught me what family isn't. Family isn't just about blood. Family isn't an obligation. Real family. They are the people who run towards you when everyone else is running away. They are the ones who believe you, even when the truth is hard. They are the ones who show up. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your own family, a boundary that you knew was necessary for your own survival? How did you find the strength to do it? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might be the one that gives someone else the courage they need today. And please, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and reclaiming your power. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone. Thank you for listening.